So we've been looking at the life of Elisha, really, and the context of the nation of Israel. He's serving in the northern kingdom of Israel. And we've seen some pretty awesome things that Elisha's carried out. For instance, he multiplied food to feed 100 men, which seemed like a lot when you're reading it maybe the first time, but it's nothing compared to Jesus feeding of the 4,000 and Jesus feeding of the 5,000. It's just a picture of Jesus feeding the 4,000 and the 5,000. You know there are liberals out there that say it's the same thing. It's like, man, you gotta read the Gospels, because not only do they happen in different places, in the same Gospel, they happen at different times, different places, different number of people that are being fed. Well, anyway, Elisha multiplies food to feed 100 men. Obviously God did this, but he raised a young lad from the dead. God did that. And most recently what we saw was Elisha's healing, God's healing through the prophet Elisha, God's healing of Naaman the leper. What do we remember about Naaman? Who is Naaman? I gotta look like, oh man. I think I saw Ben's hand go up first.
He's a warrior.
Okay, he's a warrior. What else do we know? I saw a hand over here. I think I saw Brittany, did I see your hand?
Yeah, I was going to say something like that, but also he's respected by the king.
Respected by the king of Syria. What type of a warrior would we say he was? That went up quickly. So captain of a guard of men, or I've been calling him a military general or something like that. So here's a guy who's pretty, he's not a private first class, okay? You know what I mean? He's risen up through the ranks at some level, and he's a person of authority in the Syrian army. Well, Elisha, I'm saying heals him, but we know God does that. And doesn't want to accept any money from Naaman. Now, who remembers, just real quick by review, who remembers Elisha's servant's name? Elisha had a servant. Brittany? Gehazi. What do we remember about Gehazi? Was that a hand or no? That wasn't a hand. I got a new hand. I want a new hand. We're getting a lot of... Tom. He was selfish, and how so? In what particular area? Oh, was that a hand? Oh, that was a sign. That wasn't a hand, but she and bread. He liked money, right? So he took the payment that, he took a portion of the payment that Naaman the leper was trying to give, and he ends up cursed with the leprosy himself. He loved money, and he faced judgment because of it. Well, what we've seen is that Elisha has been involved in personal ministry, and we've also seen him being involved in the political scene. And today, we look at really two episodes that really display that he's involved in personal ministry and he's involved in the political scene. Now, I'm not trying to use this to say all you Christians need to go get involved in politics and you need to march on Washington and you need to, I'm not saying anything like that. We're just looking at Elisha's ministry right now. Although, if I'm stepping out of the scriptures and I'm kind of talking to you, with some human wisdom here, again, stepping out of the scripture, I'm going to say, yeah, you need to be involved in people's you have to do ministry on a personal level, and you should vote. But again, I'm not pulling that. And I would even tell you how to vote, because, listen, it's crazy right now. Like the satanic agenda is absolutely insane from the leftists. But anyway, I'm not telling you that from Scripture. I'm just, that's what I would say. But in this passage, we're going to see a personal aspect of Elisha's ministry, and we're going to see a political aspect. First, let's take a look at the personal aspect of it. And it starts with a problem of too small of a living space. Now, real quick, who would like, and we're just throwing covetousness, just forget about that for a second, but who would like a bigger living space? In this, some people. Who needs a bigger living space? Let me tell you, I would like a bigger living space. my kids, at least my daughters, probably need one. Okay, there's a difference between those two things. I would like one. They probably need, because there's 3 of them. We have a, what's it called? It's a triple bunk. We have a triple bunk, and Isabella's going to be 18, and she's sleeping in a triple bunk. But what are you going to do? I mean, we could always do something with the back room there if we really wanted to. But our problems with living space, they're a little bit different than first century problems. I mean, with 8th century BC problem, 9th century BC problems with living space. Quite a bit different. Well, anyway, these prophets, they don't have a large enough space, and they want something big. Well, let's read the first couple of verses here. 2 Kings 6, verses 1 through, we'll go through verse 3. Now, the sons of the prophets said to Elisha, "Behold now, the place before you where we are living, it's too limited for us. It's a small place. Please let us go to the Jordan, and each of us take from there a beam, and let us make a place there for ourselves where we may live." So he said, go. Could you imagine, by the way, just being like, hey, you know what? I'm just going to take some wood and just build a house. You know what I mean? Like, who here could do that? Like, I don't know. Michael? Hey, I need an addition. I need some space. I need your help. You know, there's not many people in here that could just pick up wood. You know, it's like, wouldn't that be cool? It's like, you know what, guys, let's gather. The Amish do this. Guys, let's gather up all the men and let's go build a house. It's just a wildly different context than what we're used to and what we know. Like, I need to get some work done in my house. I talk to some contractors, I get some prices, I hire them out, it takes them forever to get back to me. Most of them don't get back to me. The ones who do get back to me they're not honest about price. They'll give you a price, they'll do the job, they'll come back and say, we're going to charge this much more because we didn't count materials in it. And you're like, wait a minute, what? That's not what I thought. You know, they're just like, let's go get some beams and we're going to build a bigger place, right? That would be kind of cool. But anyway, so Elisha says, go. Then one said, please be willing to go with your servants. And he answered, I shall go. So, you know, understand, like, we live in these places that, you know, in general are pretty good sized places for the most part. Not everybody necessarily, but I grew up with, let's see, 1, 2, my parents, me, 4, there's always usually an extra person or so living with us who wasn't part of our family. I'd say a good 6 or so people. I'm one of 4, but they weren't always living at home at the same time. So let's call it on average about 6 people living together with 1 bathroom. That's fun, right? And I think it was less than 1,000 square feet. I think is that fair? 900? Is it 900 to 1,000 square feet? It's small. Okay, it's small. In this era of time, these guys are like crammed into a room like sardines. You know, we don't need space the way these guys needed space. Okay, so they're crammed in. Their living quarters are considerably smaller than what we're used to. And so it makes sense that these guys need a bigger place. And so they get to work and they build their new place. But then while they're building this place, one of their most important tools breaks. By the way, you ever have something like that happen where you're working with something and it's like something that you need and it breaks? You're like, oh man, now I got to go to like the hardware store and try to find this part. Or, you know, I remember it was a star key. And I was using the star key to screw in these, I don't know what they're called, carpenter, big old long screws that I was putting through wood at the front porch. And I'm using the power drill, and the power drill, the bit just runs out. It just dies. It just strips. And I have no more, I can't. You know, and I'm trying to find this exact size. I'm taking the screws down. I don't remember what they're called off the top of my head. I'm taking the screws down to the hardware store. Do you have just a couple of months ago, I was going to multiple hardware stores with a piece, and I don't remember what that piece was, and I'm showing them this piece. Do you have something like this? And this one didn't have it, and I went to the other one, and I think someone had it. I don't even remember what it is. But those are cheap pieces, a few dollars, you know, $20, $30. That's not really what happens here. Check this out in verses 4 and 5. So Elisha went with them, And when they came to the Jordan, they cut down trees, which, by the way, would be a lot different work than cutting down a tree today. But as one was felling a beam, the axe head fell into the water, and he cried out and said, "Alas, my master, for it was borrowed." It doesn't seem like a huge thing to us, right? It's like, okay, anyone ever work with an axe head that fell off the handle? I have. I've chopped wood and had the axe head come off the handle and been like, oh man. Well, I just end up putting it back on and, whatever. I don't know, until it comes off again. And then I got a better axe at some point. I got a much better axe. I think it was Scott threw his axe out and I got a nice axe, a very nice axe. But one guy explains the situation here like this. He says that iron, and by the way, iron was extremely expensive in Bible times, and the prophets were poor, and this prophet, he says, is going to have to pay for another iron axe head, and it's going to stop the work. You have to go, find this tool, and you're not going to be able to go right down to, say, Ace Hardware or something like that, or Home Depot or Lowe's. You might have to go over towards the land of the Philistines or something like that. You might have to travel some distance to get something like this. So it's not the best situation. I mean, we don't know if that's exactly what's going on, but that's certainly what it seems like. But what we do see is that God cares for the situation and takes care of it. Then the man of God said, "Where did it fall?" And when he showed him the place, he dove in head first and he dug around for it. No, that's not what happened. Where did it fall? And when he showed him the place, he cut off a stick and threw it in there and made the iron float. Now, have you ever played the game Will It Float? Anyone ever play the game Will It Float? It's like, will this float? Let's throw it and see if it floats. So you'd be surprised some of the things that actually float. Like there were some things that I wasn't expecting was going to float, and they floated. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but it was like, what? What's that?
Like wood.
Like wood. Like, well, wood, I mean, it would make sense that wood would float because boats were made out of wood and there was a certain displacement, but yeah. So, but would you expect an axe to float? If you threw an axe in water, I don't think, iron doesn't, I guess a ship is made out of iron, but no, an axe doesn't float, as far as I understand. So here, the iron actually floats. I mean, it has something to do with displacement, it has something to do with the size and the weight and all that stuff, but we're not going to get into buoyancy and all that. The iron floats, and he said, "Take it up for yourself." So he put out his hand and took it. And here, it's kind of a strange account because Elisha just throws a stick in the water. That's not like a science principle. You're not going to just throw a branch into water and then whatever piece of metal, I remember going to camp some years back and riding on the jet ski, and I got thrown off the jet ski and I lost a wedding ring. Now I've got like 20 of them, you know what I mean? Because I could never find one. You know what happened? I had my original wedding ring, which I still have. It doesn't even get past my knuckle. That's not because I got huge. The ring shrunk. That's what happened. The ring shrunk. But I can't even get it to like here. It's a really nice ring, but it's, And I don't like how rings feel, so I bought another one. I didn't like how that felt, so I got all these cheap little rings, and I just can't stand the way they feel. I can't wear it. I can't do it. I told you guys about this. But I was wearing a ring, and I lost it, right? I remember which ring that was? I don't even remember which ring it was. I lost it in the bottom of the lake. Boy, it would be nice to go stick a branch in there and have that thing float up and grab it, right? Or if you had your cell phone and it fell or something in the water, that would be real nice. Well, that's not really how it works. All right, it doesn't happen. So you can't say, well, look, Elisha did. By the way, if you're Pentecostal, you might be able to say that. But you can't say, hey, Elisha did it, so we should expect it to happen today. Pentecostals would say, hey, everything that happened back then, we should expect to happen today. Okay, drop your phone in the ocean and throw a stick in it. And then we'll see if you're really a Pentecostal. See if the phone floats. You know what I mean? If everything that happened in Bible times we should expect today, like speaking in tongues and like the healings and miracles, then you should be able to throw your phone in the middle of a lake and make it float. They wouldn't do that, just so you know. They wouldn't do that. But next time you talk to a Pentecostal, maybe throw that one out there. But anyway, so this is not like some timeless principle here of some normal thing. This is an abnormal thing, but it does display that God cares about what's going on right there. God cares for these prophets and what they're going through right there at that moment. And that is a timeless principle for today. That God still cares, and he still cares maybe sometimes about things. It's like, I'm the type of guy who I feel bad praying for little things. I feel like I don't feel like this is deserving of coming across God's ears. You know what I mean? Anyone ever feel that way? Anyone at all? Just a couple? I can't say what things I should bring before God or what things I shouldn't bring before God. But an axe head would be one of those things I would never think of praying. When I'm chopping that wood, I don't chop wood a lot, but when I was chopping that wood, when that axe head came off, it might have been borrowed. It might have actually been your axe head. I don't remember. It wasn't. I didn't have an axe head. Where did that axe come from? It's ours. I have no idea how I got it. But when it broke, I wasn't thinking, I got to pray to the Lord about this axe head. I just don't think about those types of things like. But this guy did. He brought it before Elisha. He cared enough that he brought it before Elisha, and God cared enough to make it float. So I don't know what thing is or what thing isn't, worth bringing before God. But I know that God cares, and he cares about things that maybe we don't always think he cares about. That I know. Fair enough? That's a fair point to make from this passage. That's the personal, I wish I could say, hey, listen, God cares about whether your car started or not. I mean, listen, I know he does, but am I going to pray to the Lord about actually in Manhattan, when my dad's car broke down, I might have said a few prayers like, oh man, we're stuck in Midtown. We're basically in Rockefeller Center. We're on 57th Street, and it was like between like 6th and 7th Avenue. That's not a place you want to be with a broken down car. I'm like, oh man, I hope it's something light. I probably said a couple prayers, and then I fixed it. I fixed the car all by myself, kind of. So anyway, we see the personal aspect of Elisha's ministry, and then we see the political aspect here. And this is really the part I really want to spend more time on. I probably spent way too much time on these first few verses. But just to kind of set the stage a little bit, we've already seen war between Israel and Syria. And just as a reminder of where we are here in the world, you're over in the Middle East. This is the Mediterranean Sea in this whole area. If you were to zoom in on Israel, you'd have Israel being here. This is the northern kings. This is the dynasty of Jeroboam and Omri and those guys, the different dynasties up there. And Syria is their neighbor to the northeast. Well, these guys have kind of been fighting for on and off for a little while. And you might remember that Naaman was the Syrian military leader or captain or general or whatever we're going to call him. He was healed by Elisha. And so that's kind of like a good thing. That's kind of like a thing that, when it comes to international relations between Israel and Syria, you would think that would garner a certain level of peace, right? Wouldn't you think that? So one leader does something really nice for another leader. You would think that, by the way, the complete opposite of that's going on right now. I mean, are you hearing what's going on over here in the Middle East? Like they're talking about nuclear war. Nuclear war between, I said it I tried to say it normally and I end up saying it the wrong way. They're talking about nuclear war. See, I make fun of people so much that I end up accidentally saying the thing I'm making fun of. They're talking about nuclear war between Israel and Iran. And the Obama administration gave Iran all types of money. And the Democrats have given Iran all types of money. And we've enabled them to be able to have a nuclear program. I can't even say the word. If I say nuclear, just let it go. So it's an ugly situation over there right now. It's an ugly, ugly situation. But here, you have a king doing something real nice for the other king. I mean, through Elisha the prophet, you would think that would be something that would garner peace. But that's not what happens with Ben-Hadad. And it's like, man, you could do better. You could do better, Ben-Hadad. But no, he wants to gain land in Israel, and he plans to invade it. What a nice reward. What a nice reward for the healing of your military general. Let's just go back and invade the land that healed my dude over there. You know what I mean? So check it out. They want to invade the land of Israel in verse 8. Now, the king of Aram was warring against Israel, and he counseled with his servants. That's the king of Syria. He's warring against Israel, and he counseled with his servants, saying, in such and such a place shall be my camp. So we're going to attack, and we're going to attack over here. Where are they attacking, by the way? We don't know. It's such and such a place, right? We don't know. The Bible doesn't tell us. So it's not where that matters. It's the fact that he's like, we're going to go over here to whatever town, and we're going to set up camp, right? We don't know where it is, but you know who does know? Who knows? Well, that's usually a good answer. And of course, Jesus would have known that. Who knows where they're setting up camp? Well, Ben-Hadad knows. That's, yes, of course. Anyone else know? Probably Naaman. God knows. But there's one other human who knows. Was that Sabrina? Verse 9. The man of God sent word to the king of Israel, saying, beware that you do not pass this place, for the Arameans are coming down there. Elisha knows, because God told him where they're going. So they're like, we're going to go over to this place, and we're going to set up camp. And Elisha's like, hey, listen, don't go over there. That's where these guys are. Beware, watch out. And so Israel's able to kind of defend itself and be prepared for the situation. God helps the king. By the way, the king of Israel, he's an idolater. And yet God helps him in spite of that. It shows grace. It shows a portion of grace for now. So we're already seeing a little bit of grace here. Well, the king of Syria finds out what's going on. And he's not happy because he thinks there's a traitor. He thinks there's, what's that called? It's treason then, right? He thinks treason is going on. He thinks there's a mutiny for Pirates of the Caribbean fans. He thinks there's a mutiny on board, right? And so look at verse 10. The king of Israel sent to the place. Oh, we just read that. Verse 11, right? We just read that. Well, we'll read it again. No, we didn't read this. The king of Israel. See, I am Joe Biden. It really is true. The king of Israel sent to the place about which the man of God had told him. Thus he warned him so that he guarded himself there more than once or twice. So he's, the king of Israel's taking care of this, guarding himself. And then in verse 11, now the heart of the king of Aram was enraged over this thing. And he called his servants and said to them, will you tell me which one of us is for the king of Israel? Who's the informant? Right? Someone is revealing their plans, he thinks. What doesn't he realize? He doesn't realize that Elisha knows, that God's prophet knows, that God is doing all this. But one of the servants tells him about Elisha the prophet. One of the servants said, no, my lord, there's no traitor here. No, my lord, O king. But Elisha, the prophet who is in Israel, tells the king of Israel the words that you speak in your bedroom. The very things you say in private, this guy knows. Could you imagine, by the way? Now, I don't know if that's hyperbole. I don't know. I'm sure that was a manner of speech that the guy's given. But could you imagine, like, the things that you say in private? Could you imagine if someone heard some of that stuff? I say, by the way, God hears all of it. But I said this to someone. I think I said it to Josh a couple weeks ago. I think it was a week ago. I said, the walls have ears, just so you know. Right? I mean, isn't there truth to that? Every once in a while, you find yourself saying something and you put your foot in your mouth, right? The walls have ears. But anyway, so here, listen, Elisha knows the very words you speak in your bedroom. He knows everything that the king is planning. I mean, listen, you should have known. You sent Naaman over here. You sent Naaman to this prophet. He healed the prophet of an incurable disease, and now you're surprised that he knows what's up in your mind? He's a prophet of the Lord over here. And it's kind of like what the psalmist writes. Hey, the Lord nullifies the counsel of the nations. He frustrates the plans of the peoples. Ben-Hadad should have known that this was the work of the Lord. He should have repented. He should have turned from his idolatry and worshiped the Lord. But he gets angry. And by the way, sometimes that happens. Like this guy hears truth, and his response was, well, almost always two options. Repentance, anger, right? Almost always, there's probably a few things in between there. Sometimes it's both, right? Sometimes anger, then repentance. Anger or repentance. Well, he gets angry, and he goes after Elisha, the prophet, in verse 13. So he said, go and see where he is. Go and find this prophet, that I may send and take him. I want to seize him. And it was told him, saying, behold, he is in Dothan. He sent horses and chariots and a great army there, and they came by night and surrounded the city. Now, I find this interesting because he knows that Elisha knows where his troops are moving, and yet he sends his troops to Elisha, who knows where they are. It's like, hello, maybe you haven't thought that one out so much. You have to excuse Ben-Hadad, right? He's a little slow. Doesn't he realize that Elisha knows what's up? Elisha's been figuring out all this stuff through the Lord. So he plans to seize Elisha, not thinking about those things. Why does he want to take him? Maybe he wants to punish the prophet. Maybe he wants the prophet as a resource so that he could use Elisha's knowledge to manipulate the political situation and gain advantage over Zen. I don't know. We don't know. It doesn't really say. But he sends troops to Elisha at Dothan. Now, I thought we should have brought your spin wheel. We could have brought the spin wheel for tonight. We could have brought the box candy. That would have been good for this point in time. But a little Bible trivia here for what I thought was 800. I thought it was 800. I still think it's 800. But Abby, this is a little bit of a toughie. It might not be. Listen, if I were a gambling man, and I'm not because it's wrong, it's sinful, but I'd have my money on someone getting this, even though it's a very difficult question. Joe got it before I even asked the question. This morning, he answered the question before he heard it. So technically, I guess if I was a betting man, I would have won already. But he did have inside knowledge. He had read the passage in advance. Okay, so that's right. But you read the passage in advance, and you could kind of see where the question was going, and you answered it before I asked it, which is impressive. It is. I will say that's impressive. For 800, what do we know about Dothan? What do we remember about Dothan? Where else does it show up in the Bible? And this is one. That's why I give it 800, because I'm like, I know about what happened here. I think I know what happened, but I'm not 100% sure. I had to go back and double check it. I knew the general context of it, but I wanted to make sure that I got it right. Anyone remember what happened at Dothan? Maybe it's 1,000. Maybe I was going to say 1,000. I was going to say Bible trivia for 1,000. Anyone? What did I tell you today? Didn't I say Mrs. Metcalf was going to get it? Didn't I say that? Yes! That's exactly why I said it. Excellent. This is where Joseph was betrayed by his brothers. They threw him in the pit and sold him into slavery. Good work. I was pulling for you. I thought you might get it. I was pretty sure you were going to get it. I did say it, right? I said Mrs. Metcalf is probably going to get it. If anyone's going to get it. Well, anyway, tell me I don't know. Tell me I don't know this congregation. You know what I mean? I know our people. Don't know who's going to get it right. That's 800 points, if you're keeping track. That's a lot. I don't give out 800 a lot. That's a good one, though. But it's kind of like, I did kind of expect you to get that. So maybe it's 400 for you. But anyway, so if we were to zoom in on Israel, just to kind of show you where Dothan is, because, we read about Dothan, and I'm thinking like it's on the way to Egypt or something like that, or whatever. Even you said, I don't think I could point it out on a map, but I know what happened there. Well, if we were to zoom in on the northern kingdom of Israel, and you were to look at the kingdom of, the capital city of Samaria, Dothan is 12 miles north. And so it's actually up in the northern sections, not quite as far as where the Sea of Galilee would be or anything like that. But think about this. Think about the fact, now we're not going to see it on this map, but think about the fact that the Syrian army has infiltrated, let's just call it somewhere around here, has infiltrated deep into Israelite territory to the city of Dothan, to the town of Dothan, only 12 miles north of the capital. They travel by night. What does that tell you about the political situation in Israel or the military situation? Like, you're vulnerable. If the enemy army can get that close to your capital city by night, that's not good. That's not a good situation. If the Russians invaded the U.S. like they did back in the 80s in Red Dawn, anyone see Red Dawn? Saw Red Dawn. The original Red Dawn, not the new one. The original. I don't remember much about it, to be honest. But I do remember the Russians coming in by like air or something like that, and like the high school kids, whatever. I thought they were Russians. Yeah, they were whatever. I think they're Russians, but Soviets. Sorry, Soviets. I thought they were Soviets. Were they Soviets? It doesn't matter. So anyway, they wouldn't be able to get to, I don't think they'd easily be able to get to Washington, D.C., although, the terrorists got there pretty easily in 2001? It was 2001. But anyway, it shows how vulnerable Israel is. So Elisha, he has a servant here, and that servant, who is, I'm going to argue, most likely a new servant and not Gehazi, not the thief. This servant wakes up and he looks out over the town wall and he sees a massive Syrian army surrounding the city, and he's terrified in verse 15. Now when the attendant of the man of God had risen early and gone out, behold, an army with horses and chariots was circling the city. He sees them gathering around. And his servant said to him, "Oh, my master, what shall we do? We're doomed." Fear grips his heart, because you know what happens when an enemy army comes up. You're, in a small town like Dothan, you're toast. You're toast. It's over. Dothan could not possibly stand against an army like that. But Elisha is completely unfazed by it. He's completely unmoved by the threat. So he answered in verse 16, "Do not fear, for those who are with us are more." I got to pick up the pace here a little bit. "Do not fear, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them." Then Elisha prayed and said, "O Lord, I pray, open his eyes that he may see." Remember that prayer. Open his eyes that he may see. And the Lord opened the servant's eyes, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. So he looks and he sees a heavenly army, like of angels, horses, chariots of fire, and he realizes, we're good. We're good. Like, this army out here can't beat this invisible army that's around us right now. The Syrian army is nothing. And so Elisha prays once again to the Lord, but this time he prays that the Lord would strike the army with blindness in verses 18 and 19. When they came down to him, Elisha prayed to the Lord and said, "Strike this people with blindness, I pray." So he struck them with blindness according to the word of Elisha. Then Elisha said to them, "This is not the way, nor is this the city. Follow me, and I will bring you to the man whom you seek." And he brought them to the capital city, Samaria, where there is a much larger army of Israelites waiting. They travel deeper into Israelite lands, up into the hill country, following a winding route as they're led in blindness, with each step thinking they're getting closer to the prophet, but in actuality getting closer and closer to danger. And when they get to Samaria, Elisha prays that their eyes would be opened. When they had come into Samaria, Elisha said, "O Lord, open the eyes of these men that they may see." The same prayer that he prayed for his servant, he now prays for this blinded army. So the Lord opened their eyes, and they saw, and behold, they were in the midst of Samaria. I mean, they're doomed. They're dead. The king of Israel, being prepared for it somehow or another, the king of Israel, when he saw them, said to Elisha, "My father," which is a term of respect that Elisha used for Elijah, "My father, shall I kill them? Shall I kill them?" Which, by the way, that's one bright spot for this king, that he at least checks with Elisha about what to do. He at least checks with the man of God. But look at verse 22. He answered, "You shall not kill them. Would you kill those you have taken captive with your sword and with your bow? Set bread and water before them, that they may eat and drink and go to their master." And so what is God displaying here to these people? Mercy, grace. Typically, they'd be killed or taken prisoners of war, but instead, they hold a feast for these guys, they feed these guys and send them back home. And the guys are like, we can't win this. They go back home. They got to go. They choose that the better route is to go back to their king, who sent them out to take Elisha, to go back and say, we've conceded. It's like playing a chess game, and you're not going to win this, and you're not going to be able to bait the guy, into a stalemate, and you just drop your king over. You concede. You concede. Those guys just conceded. It's over. But we see how gracious God is here. So he prepared a great feast for them, and when they had eaten and drunk, he sent them away, and they went to their master, and the marauding bands of the Syrians, the Arameans, did not come again into the land of Israel. Now you could just imagine the scene back home in Damascus, in Syria. The king would say, "What's up, guys? Where's Elisha? I sent you out to get Elisha. Where did you get Elisha?" Which, by the way, he should have known enough to know, like, Elisha is, right? Knows what's going on. And they would say, "Well, king, Elisha's God blinded the entire army, and we were going to be taken captive. But then they gave us a feast of food and sent us home." And you're like, "Wait, what? I don't know if I heard that last part right." Yeah, they gave us a feast. They set prime rib of beef before us, and not lobster tails because that was unclean. Barbecue chicken and ribs. Ribs, yeah, rib is good. Not pig ribs though. It had to be beef rib. They gave us free food, and they sent us home unharmed. Now, if I'm the king of Israel, I have one of two responses. It's like, man, what am I doing? These guys really took care of our people here. Maybe I shouldn't send people back into their land. Or I could be like, "Oh, those guys, they're just trying to show me up. They're just trying to make me look bad." Something like that. Well, we read this statement, the marauding bands of the Arameans did not come into the land again. But all you have to do is continue reading to know that what this is saying is they're not sending small groups in there anymore. The next time, they're sending a much more massive army. That's what's going to happen. So this guy just continues to respond to God's grace with rebellion. That's what we see from the king of Syria. Over and over and over again. In today's passage, I see Elisha's involvement in small and great affairs, being involved in personal affairs of ministry, being involved in political affairs as a prophet of the Lord in Israel. Remember, he had taken up Elijah's mantle, and that was part of what he was to do, was to prophesy to the kings. Makes an axe head float for a small group of prophets. He blinds an entire army and leads them to the capital. But in the end, God is the one who carries all of it out. In the end, what this is all showing us is about God and man. It's showing us about God and his grace and his mercy and his awesome power to do unbelievable things, impossible things. And what I'm seeing, at least in the second part of it, is man's rejection of it. I'm seeing in the king of Syria a sub-theme of this king just continues to reject what God is doing for him. Healing his military commander, saving the lives of the army that he sent after Elisha. God is doing that. And Ben-Hadad, the son of Hadad, the son of Baal, basically, continues to reject what God is doing for him. He refuses to submit to the Lord. His resolve against Israel grows stronger. But let me tell you something about Ben-Hadad. He'll get his. Ben-Hadad will face the judgment of God eventually. But what I see as the overarching theme of all this is God's power and his grace and his mercy and his caring for people and for life. I think that's fairly obvious in these verses. So I would say to you, given how much God loves you and cares for you and cares for people and cares for your needs, maybe smaller needs and bigger needs, caring for the life of entire, even your enemies, God cared for the life of their enemies. I would say this: don't be rebellious against the Lord like Ben-Hadad was. Instead, submit to him like the prophet Elisha did and trust in this all-powerful God of grace and mercy. And that's the end of our Bible study for tonight. So we're going to take our hymnal and turn over to 328. If you're not sure you're saved,